Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome into the Rams Skinny here on the LA Football Network, live on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. As always, thank you for making us a part of your day, your daily commute, your evening listening, your morning watching, wherever you are, whenever you are watching or listening. We certainly appreciate it. If you haven't already, if you're on YouTube, Rams LAFB is the YouTube channel. Please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps us out. We're also everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. Google Podcast is going away. I just kind of found that out. Like, yeah, we still have audio, but that's not like a huge priority. So I don't even really pay attention. I just found out Google Podcasts are going away. It's now going to be YouTube audio or something, YouTube Podcasts or something like that. So anyway, but anywhere you get your podcast, we are. You can subscribe there. Or, as always, go to LAFBnetwork.com. All of our Rams Skinny podcasts, all of our Rams editorial articles, other Rams content is all housed right there. Before we get into our rundown for the show, let me welcome in the best dressed host of the show. We're both actually dressed up a little bit today. Even I have a polo on, but you got top button, got rocking there, looking good. How you doing, Skinny Team?
I'm doing fantastic, man. We were talking pre-show a little bit. Matthew Stafford documentary. You, Big Shot, were at USC practice, so you didn't get a chance to watch it. But I sat down and checked it out while it was on YouTube. The premiere. Yeah,
I will be watching it, checking it. I think it's worth watching. But yes, I was at the final media available USC spring practice. And then I'll be at the spring game on Saturday. So looking forward to that. So if there's any Rams fans that are also Trojans fans, got some analysis up from that. Plus just a little teaser for any Trojans fans. And hey, this could happen for the Rams, but in about an hour on our USC podcast, we're having Brendan Rice on the show. So we'll tease that. But you mentioned Matthew Stafford and this doc that the Rams produced. It was an in-house production. Trailer looked awesome. You know, all the media that got sneak peeks ahead of time, Schrager, Jordan Rodriguez, all those were praising it and just saying, you know, what a great production it was, what a cool insight it was into Matthew Stafford. What was your takeaway on this Matthew Stafford doc?
If you want to know, just like get a few glimpses into what Matthew Stafford's kind of day-to-day experience is, it's great. You know, he's got some touching moments with his wife and kids, and you know, with Cooper Kupp, you know, they talk about a burrito for a little bit. That's funny. But, you know, I was expecting kind of some more, behind the scenes kind of, you know, he and Cooper Kupp, you know, hashing out some plays and talking it up. And I know I recognize you can't, you know, spill the beans on anything. And Sean McVay is incredibly secretive when it kind of comes to that kind of thing. So the in-houseness may have prevented that. But I also kind of really wanted an extended look at Detroit and all the fallout and how you know everybody was feeling about, you know, that kind of contentious reuniting in Detroit. So I didn't think we got all of that, but I would say, you know, everybody that's watching this is super, we're all super Rams fans. So go check it out. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Excellent production value.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing what I've seen their names on Twitter and I feel terrible. I'm not like thinking of them off the top of their head. One is like Yusuf or something. I can't remember his handle, but anyway, like their team, top notch, one of the best out there. And you know what these teams now produce is so cool because, you know, we didn't used to have that even what, like 5 years ago or so. I feel like we didn't have that same kind of inside look from just the team production houses and stuff. So obviously, you know, the Chargers have done a lot of stuff. They do like their all-in series, which I'm curious if they'll do now with Jim Harbaugh. And then the Rams have done some cool feature stuff. And then this is obviously one of those. So I'm curious, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Matthew Stafford going to be one of the quarterbacks on the Netflix season 2 quarterback?
Oh, I hadn't heard that, but that would be interesting.
Let me double check before I thought I heard he was. And if that's the case, I wonder if there was like Netflix is showing this much stuff, so this other production couldn't show this much stuff.
Oh, interesting. There's some crossover there.
Yeah, maybe it's like, you know, you have certain, you know, rights, what you sign a deal with and what can do. I don't know. I'll look up later. So don't quote me on that. I thought I remember seeing that Stafford was going to be in it. maybe it was just teased and it hasn't been officially announced. No, yeah, I think he is going to be starting it.
That's great because the first three were so boring. It's like you pick the one guy that's inevitably going to like go deep in the playoffs. You know,
Kirk Cousins was great. I loved Kirk Cousins on it.
He was the most interesting part, but that guy is not. He's not terribly like. I mean, he's not charismatic, but I mean, between he and Marcus Mariota, they're probably the most chill dudes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and Mariota was a definite wild card. They obviously picked him before he got benched, so that's always unfortunate. Yeah. But yeah, so Stafford, I think, will be on season 2, which maybe that has something to do with it. Is like, there's only so much each crew was allowed. They had certain parameters. I don't know. But anyway, that could maybe just be why it wasn't as in depth as would have liked. But cool. I will check it out. So check that out. You can see it now on the Rams YouTube page. We got a link up on LAFB Network as well. You can just get directed directly there. Let's do a little draft talk though, Skinny, shall we? We're a week away. 1 week.
From the
NFL draft. As of this recording, it's Friday, so we are a week away from rounds 2 and 3. Round 1 would have already been complete, and the Rams, as of now, are still partaking in that round 1. So we did a full mock draft last episode on Monday. Mixed reviews, I think. I don't think we got a ton of downright hate. Definitely not a lot of love for anyone taking a quarterback. But what we're going to do is kind of get into today, what different position picks maybe mean. Like, what's the thought process and the value there? So I'll let you, Skinny, kind of describe your thought of this. Like, this I think would be a good to really dive deep into instead of just, throwing names out here, but like, what does it mean if the Rams don't go defense in the first round? So I'll let you explain the parameters and then we'll riff back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Aaron Donald retiring and that changes everything. That changes the whole calculus of this team. So that kind of throws a lot of things up into the air about their trajectory, their Super Bowl window. What are they thinking there? So it's something that I've been considering in all my articles that I've been writing and in the, all of our episodes here lately that have had to do with the draft. I've been thinking about what do these picks mean for the 2024 season and kind of beyond. And then Peter Schrager drops his mock draft, his 1.0 mock draft. And, Schrager, a good friend of Sean McVay, he spilled the beans on some of the things that the news that's happened before. And, he's saying, without a doubt, Rams are going offense unless they trade back. Now, this is a weird season. This could be a smokescreen. This could be distracting. This could be, all sorts of anything, being the inside man. But, that really throws into question, we've been thinking defense. They got to go defense. They didn't really invest in defense and free agency. Well, they're going to do it in the draft. But now, what does it mean if they don't go defense in the first round? That's kind of the biggest question that just keeps hitting my head,
Yeah, absolutely. And, before we even dive into that, I find it so funny that, I'm not calling anyone out. I'll admit I don't live on Twitter like some of these other content creators. So, I mean, there's things I just miss. But relatively, I feel like, and, us too, the chatter all on Twitter and with everyone is, Rams, are probably should obviously we still believe that they should go defense at 19. But a lot of the mocks that creators have made is, we're, defensive line, edge, whatever, insert player. And then, once Schrager comes out and says that, all of a sudden everyone's like, they've been saying offense for weeks and they're going receiver or they're going to go offensive tackle. And I just find that funny that, I don't think everyone had been saying that for weeks. So, but we can change. You can certainly change for sure. And we've been joking, we think they will. I still kind of think this is a smokescreen, which I'll get to in a second, but I still think defense is the priority. But we've joked like, hey, we can say all this and Snead's just going to go offensive tackle. Like we've said that for a while now, because that's the way Snead operates in the draft room. But before we get into like what it means, I do find it interesting, Skinny, that, Schrager obviously super plugged in, really good friends with McVay at his wedding. Like he always gets the scoops when they need to go out. I can't see McVay and Snead truly saying we are going to go offense, that unless we trade back, we're going offense. And Schrager saying, I'm going to leak that out publicly to tell all other teams what they're doing. Like to me, it's like them saying, hey, go leak this, make everyone think all they want, but we're not guaranteed to go offense. Like, we're still going to go what we think our board falls, what we need. Snead has said in his conferences that they're going to look at defensive line at every draft pick. So, I mean, it certainly can happen that they end up going offense. And if one of these receivers falls to 19 or, they like a tackle there. So I'm not saying they won't, but I can't see it. They're only going offense unless they trade back. To me, it feels more of like hey, yeah, get this out there and have everyone go crazy with
it. Yeah, I mean, this is truly the silly season. All this three-dimensional chess and the smoke screens and all that. It's it really is like this week is my least favorite in all of the NFL calendar, just because like all the mocks are coming out and everybody's trying to get clicks, including us. No doubt about that. But only a few original ideas can really bubble up to the surface, and nobody knows what's right. And and then the day of comes and it's like March Madness. You picked Kentucky to go all the way through and they get bounced in the first round or something.
Yeah.
So,
and all that being said, we know the Rams are about the worst poker players in the entire NFL. So they don't have a great poker face. But what's funny, I trust Schrager more than about any analyst out there when it comes to the Rams because he is the most plugged in. But you've seen other guys, Benjamin Albright, I think Daniel Jeremiah maybe had this in one of the Rams trading up for a defensive player like we've talked about. So those guys, I think, are more speculating, whereas Schrager's talked, I think, directly to the guys. But again, I can't see them telling him in confidence and him leaking it. To me, it's more them saying like, yeah, go leak this out. We're not running by that. Like, we're going to do what we want, but go leak it out. We're going offense and see how everyone freaks out.
Or it's just so obvious that Schrager would do that.
Yeah.
That he does, that everybody's thinking the opposite. So yeah, it's peak rumor season. It's gosh.
It's so funny because I'm not at all saying this to like sound big time, but I'm starting to get like, at least on the USC side, some actual like sources in the building and like have some, get some background information, but it's so new. I still like when I get stuff, I'm like, am I allowed to share this? Do I look slimy if I share this? Like, are you telling me to get this out? Or are you telling me just as like a friend? So it's such a weird actual avenue to be in that we're finally getting to, which is kind of cool. But anyway, let's get to your question. I'll let you get into it first. If the Rams go offense at 19, let's say they put it 19, they don't trade back. I think it could be receiver. It could be I mean, it really, the only thing it really won't be probably is center or guard, but right. and running back. But I would not be shocked at all if they do receiver. If someone like a Dunze somehow falls, if Thomas at LSU, I know a lot of people like that fit there potentially. There's other receivers that'll sneak up into the first that aren't getting talked about, but if the team sees value there. Tackle, obviously, the kid out of Oregon State that I always say his name wrong, but he's a great I'd say his name wrong too. The Penn State kid. Yeah, thank you. Those are great options, and we still have to keep on the table a quarterback potentially at 19. But let's just, before we get into that craziness, what does it mean for the defense and for the philosophy in your mind if they do go offense at 19?
They're all in on offense then. If that's the case, if they trade up, if they go offense anywhere in the first round, that their play is we're gonna see if we can score 38 points a game, and I think they can.
Yeah,
if they add if they become the greatest offensive line in football, I mean, you got Matthew Stafford with extra time on his hands. You've got a running back that we've seen can put up huge numbers, game-changing numbers, and then you've got two of the best receivers in the game. I mean, that you gotta like that positioning. But they're also the philosophy is also this defense is not going to be good. They were bad rushing the passer last year. They didn't get better losing Aaron Donald, and they haven't added anybody that's a significant addition to the defense that's going to rush the passer. They've improved on the back end, but pass rush is more important than strong secondary, in my opinion. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on offense in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as we just said, we can see it happening. I wouldn't hate it, depending on who the player is, and it would obviously signify that they are just trying to be the greatest show on turf again. Like, let's just have a juggernaut offense and a defense that is probably not going to be good, but hey, every now and then is going to get us a turnover, like an opportunistic style defense where we're going to be aggressive We may give up some big plays, but we may create turnovers. Like that may be the thought process. Like we're not going to be this defense that's going to only give up 18 points a game. But hey, if we can create 2 to 3 turnovers, or that's probably unrealistic, but 1 to 2 turnovers, like that's going to flip the field for us and allow us to get to that 35, 38, 40 point range. What concerns me, and this is, everyone wants this to happen, but for the thought thinkers and the conversation of like, well, yeah, you get this, and then, we'll just build up the defense, in the mid rounds. It's like for every 2023 draft class that Snead's had, which was a great draft class, as we've said, there's a 2020 draft class where not a single player is on the roster. Like it hasn't been like as I think Les Snead's a top 5 GM. What he's done with this roster, how they've shifted and pivoted and done different things. The combination of him and Snead are two of the best in the business. But it's not like he's knocked every draft out of the park. I mean, there's been a lot of poor draft picks and guys that haven't panned out, and guys that we've all hoped, okay, this is the guy that can be a starting edge guy or this, and it hasn't happened on the roster. So just because last year you got gems in the 3rd round, you got gems in the 5th round, and I think the Rams have been better than most teams at getting that in the later rounds, but to bank on that is not an ideal proposition. You don't want to bank on like, well, we'll just find our edge in the 4th round, or they don't have a 4th round pick. We'll just find our edge in the 5th round and slot him in to start. Like that's not a process, a winning process. So if they're at 19 and you have Brian Thomas on the board, you have Oregon State tackle on the board, but you also have Latu or Brian Murphy or the Iowa State tackle, Jaron, trying to blank on his name now, but you have those guys on the board. That's where I'm like, man, you got to get that defensive guy that, it's still a 1st round pick isn't a guarantee. So I don't want to be misheard there. Like you're still playing cards essentially and hoping, but it's a lot more guarantee a guy like a Brian Murphy who's shown production in the SEC with that, or I guess Big 12 going to the SEC, but versus a flyer in the 3rd or 4th. So I don't know. But yeah, it definitely signals what you were saying, that they're just all in on the offense then.
Yeah. When you think about how both McVay and Les Snead look at draft picks, and they do have a much more disciplined view of best player available, not necessarily taking to fill a position, but also looking at what do they value. Mm-hmm. And if they don't believe in any of these defenders that's going to fall to them in 19, or they don't think that the value of trading up is to go get one of these guys, that stays consistent with at least their thought process that they always go through, which is, is this who's the best player available, and also is that something that we value? And they continue to show us what they value with draft picks, and they've used their first draft pick in the 2nd and 3rd rounds for offensive linemen, as more specifically over the last couple of years. So, what does it mean? It means that they're sticking to their guns about what they believe and their philosophy about draft picks and what the value is. So that's good news.
Yeah. And to their credit, right? Last year we talked about a lot. Everyone talked about like their first pick in the 2nd round. The thought was offensive line, or not offensive line. Excuse me. The thought was like a cornerback, edge, a lot of the same positions we're talking about this year. They go offensive line. That was the right pick. I mean, Steve Avila obviously is a cornerstone offensive lineman who's now going to be a center on this team. So some definitely good stuff there. But you look at years past, their first pick was Logan Bruss. He's on the practice squad. Their first pick the year before that, Tutu Atwell. I wouldn't even say the jury's still out on him. Like we don't know what's going to come of that. So they definitely stick with their guns, which I think we definitely need to, respect. And obviously they have a process that they go through. It'll just be really interesting to see if they stick with that this year or they do pivot a little bit. And with the change of having no Aaron Donald, they may need to.
Yeah. I mean, you think about sticking to a moral philosophy is a good idea, but also that's the definition of insanity. And they're kind of if they're returning to the well of this is what we value, and they keep missing on it, then it is time to pivot. And we've been banging the table for defensive talent forever, and the backstop has always been Aaron Donald, and now that backstop is gone. You know, there's not a, you know, heading into last year, the national narrative was, you know, it's Aaron Donald, and then a bunch of nobodies, right? And they're making fun of Russ East because he's got a funny name. But now it's, you know, it isn't doomsday on defense, but you got to add talent at some point.
Yeah.
38 points or nothing, you know. It's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and brand new defensive coordinator, new coaches in there. So I mean, it's a different thing, and it'll be their first draft process too. Now, what would be interesting, Skinny, and then we'll wrap up with some quarterback talk. But something I haven't seen talked about a lot, and I don't know if the Rams would do this, but it would be really interesting depending how the board falls. Is let's say at 19, there's just an offensive guy that they can't pass up. Take the offensive guy, but let's say Latu keeps somehow sliding back, which I think he's going to end up going top 15, but let's just say he somehow starts sliding back, or Murphy, one of these tackles. I mean, what's to stop the Rams from trading back into the first? Everyone talks about trading back because that's what they usually do. They never, outside of like Kyron Williams, they rarely trade up. But what if they trade back into the first and we see 2 first-round picks from the Rams? Like, how wild would that be?
That would be insane. That's probably the hottest take I've heard in a while. But you know,
both.
That would be, you know, that's kind of like the thought process that the Chargers are kind of going through right now, of using number 5 to flip into more picks. And you know, when you have high level needs, you got to get high level talent to meet the needs. That's just the case that the Rams find themselves in. So you know, it opens the question of like, you know, I've posed this question before, but what is their Super Bowl window? We've always been thinking it's the Stafford kind of window of 2, 3 years. How much does he have left in the tank? Once he's gone, that window closes pretty significantly. So,
yeah.
But yeah,
and this is more now. I'm shifting to kind of like the pro offensive side on in the first round. Like this could also be a thought process of, and I think we would be in agreement here, like they're not a player away on defense from being a dominant defense. Like they're just not. Even with Aaron Donald, they might not be. Last year was, I think, as good as they could have been, and they were still a pretty, you know, middle of the road defense. They had great moments, and they also had other not so great moments. So the other thought is like, and kind of what you were saying in the beginning, going all in on offense, but that just to expand on that, it's like, you know what, as great as a talent as one of these these tackles that we need are, how much improvement will they actually, if you look at like a baseball stat of what, like WAR, like how much WAR are they going to give me versus one of these top end offensive talents? Can they actually give me 3, whatever, we'll just call it 3 points extra a game with their, you know, whether it's receiver, tackle, whatever. Is a defensive player at 19 going to subtract 3 points from the other team? Or is our defense need that much work? Let's just throw 8 darts in the middle rounds and let's just see if we hit on 1 or 2 of them, and at least we get more depth there. Like that could also be the thought process of that kind of WAR, you know, wins against replacement is determined baseball of what we actually get there at 19. That, yeah, we need this more. The talent of these players is probably greater even, but does that talent actually help us win more versus adding this extra talent to an already good offense? So, I mean, that could be a thought too.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly there. I mean, you know, adding strength to strength, you know, you start, you know, go back and read about the British Navy, you know, versus the British Navy versus the British Army, you know. You know, they added strength on strength and they built the, you know, world power. We're getting down a weird rabbit hole there, but
that's great. The Los Angeles British Navy. That's a good comp right there for the Rams. So the defense is the Army and the offense is the Navy.
Exactly. When you're an island nation, you don't need an army as much. You need a navy.
I mean, it makes sense. It just makes sense. You're surrounded by water. We're not here in LA, but that's the way they're building this roster. So let's just end with this quarterback talk. We got a lot of heat on our mock draft for taking Spencer Rattler in the third, which I still think is a home run pick. If Spencer Rattler falls to the third, all the chatter is he's probably going to go second round. We had one comment. I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize if you're listening that I'm not shouting you out, but that I think understood a little bit more of like our thought process of you know, you don't want to draft a quarterback when you need a quarterback, like because that's when you end up being a team drafting the top 5 because your previous year was so bad. Like the idea is, I'm not saying replicate the Packers because they haven't really won a lot. They've had good quarterbacks, they haven't won a lot. But the idea is you want to have almost a QB in waiting for when your franchise guy is then done. I mean, look at the Patriots thought they were going to have that, and then Brady played longer than expected. They shipped Jimmy G off, and now they're in purgatory and they're drafting 3rd overall with a new head coach. So our thought was get a guy in there. Don't use the 1st round pick. I think you and I both agree that's a wasted pick. But a 3rd rounder for a guy that has the potential, again, it's all throwing darts, but a guy that has the potential of taking the baton from Stafford when he does hang it up. So you have a plan moving forward instead of Stafford retiring and you got nobody there, because guess what? Jimmy G's on a 1-year deal. He's not a long-term guy. Even if he was, I mean, does anyone really want him being the franchise guy after Stafford in 2 years at his age anyway? Stetson Bennett, we have no idea what he's going to be. I mean, maybe he could end up being the franchise guy, but if all the off the field stuff aside, like, I don't even know if he's really good enough to be the franchise guy, if I'm being frank. So that was our reasoning, but you get into it. If what do you think it means if the Rams do take another quarterback? Cause that would essentially put 4 on the roster.
Well, and if I'm a GM, which I'm not, nobody's asking me this, but my philosophy is similar to the Rams, which is accumulate picks and use one of those picks every year, maybe not every single year, but every year or so, to go after a quarterback. Because we've seen quarterbacks in the 2nd round, in the 5th round, Sam Howell, Jalen Hurts, 7th round Brock Purdy, turn into a starting caliber quarterback. And if you have that on your roster, that can be your next guy or a really great trade piece, because everybody's looking for the most important position. So why not draft the most important position when you like a guy? So what does it mean? For me, it goes back to the Super Bowl window. Are they trying, are they looking at 2024 legitimately as a, hey, we think we're in the perfect position to go deep into the playoffs, get into the NFC Championship, push into the Super Bowl. I don't know if that's what they're thinking right now. I think they're thinking, this is 2017. We're gonna ride this offense as far as we can, and then 2018, 2025 is kind of what they're thinking, and so this is, to me, like the Spencer Rattler decision is a less Snead pick, because we don't know what his career desires are. I think he's going to stick around beyond the McVay era and see how long he can kind of be this GM and see if he can hire the next McVay once McVay hangs him up. And so, he's thinking beyond 2024, 2025. He's thinking, where am I as a GM once Stafford retires?
Yeah. And now with the new roster rules, right, you can protect 3 quarterbacks. So it's not like if Jimmy G is the backup for, he won't be the first 2 games because he's suspended. So they got to have someone anyway, whether Stetson Bennett's ready or not. But you protect 3. And so I don't think, just judging by how last year Stetson Bennett's probably not like a hot commodity out on the market. So if he's able to be a practice squad guy and you do take a Rattler or someone like that later on, then you have a guy you can develop in time. So I get the conversation of like, we're in a win now mode. We have an aging quarterback. We have the right pieces on offense. Like, why waste a 3rd rounder on a quarterback? I get that. I do. And that's why I don't want him to waste a 1st rounder on it. You don't use your 1st round pick on a backup quarterback for now. But I think it's valuable enough in the 3rd round where you're setting yourself up for a future. And God forbid, if you lose a Stafford, I mean, we saw last year, they almost missed the playoffs because of Stafford missing 1 game. When they had Brett Rippon have to come in and they had that egregious loss against the Packers. So, and he wouldn't even necessarily be the backup. I get that, Jimmy G is, but I just think it would be a smart move. And it makes sense, I think, for the Rams to do that based on their trajectory over the next kind of 2-3 years.
Yeah. And I think that going back to just the value piece, the trade commodity, it's I understand the dislike for that pick, but you know, you were like you're saying, the Green Bay game is a perfect reason why you need to, you know, keep that idea front of mind. You know, it's similar to kicker. You know, it's like they've kicked the can on kicker, and they've faced the consequences of that, and they've kicked the can on finding a legitimate developmental backup for Stafford, and they paid the consequences for that. And like you were saying, you know, the defense isn't one player away from turning this squad into a championship team. I think this is a playoff team. I think an outside chance of making the Super Bowl, but you know, I don't know if that's too realistic of a stance to take at this point of the season, because I know everybody's super optimistic off of last year.
Yeah. I mean, this is a different team, different roster, different coaching staff on the defensive side. So we'll see obviously after the draft and make real assessments then. But and the last thing I'll say, and this is, you don't plan for this. You know, you're not planning to draft someone to trade someone, but Sam Howell is a good example. A little different because he played an entire season, which I don't know if Rattler, and we just keep saying Rattler because we did that in our mock, but any mid-round quarterback would do that for the Rams. But, you know, they were able to trade, you know, Howell was a 5th-round pick. They were able to end up trading him, and it was a Howell, I think a 4th and a 6th that then turned into a 3rd and a 5th or something. So they were able to basically move up 2 rounds to trade Sam Howell. And so there's that option for the Rams. If they get a guy, maybe he gets a couple starts and shows some flashes that a really quarterback needy team, they can turn into, you know, draft capital later to make up for it. So, you know, just things to think about. But anything else to add on that, or are you good to wrap this up?
No, we can wrap it up.
All right. So, a lot of fun conversations. We are a week away from the draft. Next week, we got to lock this in, but we are planning to do a live mock draft with our partners on the network, our Chargers Unleashed podcast. Dan and Jake, they cover the Chargers, great for LA Football Network. Obviously, we do the Rams, so we'll do a live full 7-round mock draft. They'll obviously handle the Chargers, we'll have the Rams. It'll be fun back and forth between the 4 of us. Maybe crack some beers, pour some whiskey, have a good time. So that'll be coming next week. Be on the lookout for that. Other than that, all of our Rams content is always up at LAFBnetwork.com and Rams LAFB on YouTube. We appreciate you all for tuning in. Let us know what you think, your thought process. If you think the Rams do go offense in the first round, if they stick and go defense like the original thought was, or just what you think they're going to do. We'd love to hear your thoughts and where they go from here, because it's going to be fascinating and it all unfolds next Thursday. But for Skinny T, I'm Ryan Dowry. This is the Rams Skinny. Talk to you guys all next week.